Okay, so thanks for checking out these videos. If you're at this last one, maybe you've watched all the previous videos, the intro plus the 10 videos on the 10 planetary archetypes. And now I just want to do 5 or 10 minutes summarizing and integrating this material. Um, I think what we've been talking about is learning to live a balanced life, or learning to live a multi-dimensional life. I really like the word multi-dimensional. I've been using it as kind of synonymous with the word archetypal, multi-dimensional, archetypal. Everything is made of archetypes. Everything has multi-dimensions. Every human being is made of all the archetypes. Every place in the world, every object in the world, every creature is made of these archetypes in these different dimensions. It's just a question of the proportions and the unique chemistry of each thing is made of different proportions. All the gods are always present, but in different proportions. We as human beings can learn to modulate our consciousness and actually actively participate in the forces that make us up. This, to me, is what spiritual practice is all about. It's about learning to be a mindful, conscious vehicle and channel of all the gods and goddesses, learning to honor all the gods and goddesses, all of the 45 archetypal fundamental energies, or the 10 primary energies in each moment. And this is a life's work, and we never do it perfectly. We're always imperfect in how we honor the gods, and we have to love ourselves and accept ourselves as the number one step on the path for not doing it perfectly. But we can always do better, and we can always do worse in terms of honoring all the gods. And so, to me, it's kind of like learning to juggle, living a multi-dimensional life. At first, we start with just one ball in our hand, one archetype, and we have maybe our typical way of being in the world, the Saturnian patterns and structures that we're somewhat stuck in. That's the ball that we're juggling. And then maybe we bring in a second ball, the Uranus archetype, and we try to break free of the box that we're living in by dialing up the Uranus energy. And when we tune into the trickster and try to be a channel of the trickster, we're making unexpected choices and moving in unexpected directions. But then we also have to remember to honor other archetypes all the time. We have to be considering the full range of the archetypal dimensions of who we are. And so, for me, my spiritual practice is often a form of self-questioning, where I question the choices that I'm making, and I question whether I'm honoring all the gods in the choices that I'm making. And so if there's 10 primary archetypes, there should be like 10 questions we're asking ourselves all the time in order to honor all the gods. Now that could make it difficult to be really present for our lives if we were constantly going through a checklist of 10 questions. And so there has to be a way of doing it more organically. But when you're first starting to practice astrology, Pluto's invading my office here with the birds outside at the moment. There's a bird feeder here, and they're kind of in a battle over the last seeds. Anyway, when you're trying to live a more multidimensional life, at first you maybe have to do it in a more systematic way, kind of systematic inquiry in each moment. And so the questions are things like, is this choice coming from depth? That's a Pluto question. Let me close the window here. Pluto question. Is this choice that I'm about to make coming from my depth? Have I explored myself deeply in order to make a good choice here? Another question is Neptune, with regard to Neptune. Am I coming from contact with my soul, with my spirit, with spiritual awareness as I make this choice, as I take this action? Is it coming from my spiritual awareness, the choice that I'm making? Am I tapped into my intuition as I make this choice? Am I honoring my dreams and what they said to me last night? Am I honoring that intuitive thing in my body that's telling me to go in this direction or not go in this direction? Am I honoring the trickster, Uranus, in this choice in terms of going in an unexpected direction, breaking free of the norms? Am I being more spontaneous and playful and not just predictable and doing the same old thing? With Venus, it's like, am I making an artistic choice here? Am I trying to be artistic in how I'm going about the thing that I'm doing? Am I letting myself shine and be seen? That's the Sun. Am I remembering that I'm vulnerable? That's a big one for me. That for me as a man, I've been acculturated to kind of ignore the fact that I have a vulnerable child dimension of who I am. And so sometimes I don't take good care of myself because I forget that there's a part of me that needs to be cared for, this vulnerable part that can get scared sometimes of certain things. And so one of the questions I'm asking myself when I do certain things, especially if there's any kind of risk of getting hurt in any way, is, am I considering the inner child as I go about this endeavor? Am I being careful and mindful about this new activity that I'm engaging in? Am I taking it easy, moving slowly so that the child part of me doesn't get too freaked out? That's honoring the moon. And then, you know, something like Jupiter. Am I expanding into unknown territory? Am I coming from a place of hope and positivity? Am I coming from abundance consciousness? That's Jupiter. Or am I coming from poverty consciousness? That can be problematic side of the Saturn archetype. And so there's at least 45 questions to be asking yourself when you're really considering those 45 combinations of the 10 primary archetypes. And there's really basic ones like the Saturn-Pluto channel, which I talked about earlier in this series, has a lot to do with honoring and exploring and acknowledging that we have a shadow dimension to the psyche and trying to be mindful of our shadow impulses so that we don't unconsciously act them out. And so one question to kind of always be asking yourself is, have I considered my shadow? And am I aware of my shadow as I make this choice? Am I acting out my shadow? Another kind of fundamental question has to do with the Saturn-Neptune channel, which is where we learn to be spiritually disciplined and spiritually mature. And so as we make a choice in our life, are we coming from a place that's informed by spiritual discipline, a serious commitment to a spiritual life? If we're not making choices that are informed by meditation and other kinds of spiritual practice, we maybe are making less good choices than we might. The Saturn-Uranus channel is where there's a lot of safety consciousness. Saturn-Uranus can be the negative trickster when sudden, unexpected challenges and difficulties come in, like accidents and so forth. And we need to be aware of the potential for accidents and the potential for safety issues. And so we need to bring a kind of safety consciousness to the choices that we make. These are kind of fundamental Saturn channel questions. But I want to end here with the series of questions that to me are working for me right now, that are summarizing the most important questions that I need to be considering for me. And so whenever I'm making an important choice, or even a not so important choice, I ask these series of questions. The first question is, am I coming from depth? Is this a deep choice? Or is it a shallow choice? A not so mindful or deep choice? So is it deep is the first question. The second question I ask is it classy? Is this a classy choice? That brings in Saturn right away. So the first question is Pluto. The second question is Saturn, a certain kind of Saturn, more Venus-Saturn. Venus-Saturn has a lot to do with being classy. Somebody like, who am I thinking of here? I'm having a brain moment. Mercury, Saturn in the sky. My brain is shutting down. I can't think. Ah! So I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to continue. Who am I thinking of? I am thinking of John F. Kennedy's wife, and I don't know why my brain is not remembering her name, but she was a classy lady, and she was born with Venus Saturn. She had that quality of beauty and sweetness, that's Venus, but a kind of classy, mature restraint. And so the second question, is it classy? Am I, of all the possible choices that are deep, is this a classy one that shows a certain maturity level and respect for tradition? The third question moves beyond that Saturnian level, and I ask, is it playful? Is it a movement into the unknown? Am I surprising myself? Of all the choices that I could be making, is it deep? Is it classy? But then, is it playful? This is more a Uranus question. Am I opening to the unknown? And then the next question is it expansive? That's Jupiter. Am I honoring Jupiter and the potential to expand into unknown territory, to move beyond the same limits of my ordinary life into new territory, and that impulse towards travel and expanding your horizons. And the next question, is it responsible? Is it deep? Is it classy? Is it playful? Is it expansive? Is it responsible? So after you've chosen an expansive choice, you bring back the Saturn filter to make sure you're being responsible, whatever that means to you. Responsible to yourself, responsible to loved ones, responsible as a member of society, responsible to your own sense of dharma. And so that's a good Saturn filter for making choices. And the final question, which is also the first question that you come back to, is the question, is it kind? Is this a kind choice? And this is Venus again. Am I being loving and kind? It's also lunar to some degree. Am I being caring and kind and loving to myself and others in this choice? Is it kind? Is the fundamental question I think that we have to ask whenever we do anything. We could add other questions to this list. Is it artistic? Is it an honoring of the mind? Is it soft? I don't know. There's lots of questions that relate to the different archetypes. So these are some of the fundamental questions that I'm considering as I make choices at this point on my journey. So I thought I would share them as a way of kind of summarizing everything and giving you a sense for my general philosophy of astrology. I think the spiritual discipline of astrology is about learning to make more and more multi-dimensional choices, where in each moment we're juggling lots of different kinds of energy. As soon as we start to add archetypal dimensions to the moment in the choices that we make, you know, when we start to bring in a little bit of art, a little bit of music to our choices, when we bring in a little bit of nature, when we bring a little spirituality, when we bring in sexuality, it's like honoring all of who we are in every moment. That's what is most attractive to us as human beings. And so I hope that if you consider getting an astrological reading with me, that this resonates, because this is the philosophy that I work with. And I look forward to sharing more with you. And take care, everybody.